like, how are we here again? I mean, I know how we're here again, but I
Yeah.
really had convinced myself that white women would get it together as a collective and maybe
Same.
push her over. And I know better. You and I, we both know better,
We
Lurie.
do. We do.
We
Shame
both
on
know
us.
better. And it's like I have blue nails. Do you see this? I went and I got
Wow.
blue nails. And they're gel, so
Mm.
they can't come off for like another week. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm like personally embarrassed to a certain extent because honestly, I know you want to talk about, what basically our latest podcast episode, not this shit again. And
Yeah.
we talked about Project 2025, but we had just done a podcast literally
Right.
30 days prior about
Right.
Project 2025. And the tenor of that podcast was like, we were like, P25 is going to do this and this and this and la, 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 la. Because neither Jess Pieklo nor I really had let it sink in that it was
Mm.
possible that this man was going to win again. So we were
Mm.
just like, oh, yeah, they're going to create a Department of Life. Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. Isn't that going to be hilarious? And then, and
Look
now we're
who's
like,
laughing now. Look who's
yeah,
laughing
like
now.
Jesus Christ, there's gonna be a separate Department of Life, separate
Yeah.
from from HHS with which RFK is gonna run.
Right.
They're gonna have a Department of Life run by some guy from Americans United for Life or Operation Rescue or
Mm.
whatever. And
Mm.
this is
Mm.
real
Mm. Mm.
life. Like this isn't just like a wing and a prayer or this could happen, but it's never gonna happen because we as a
Right.
country are not this fucking stupid. But
Oh, but
hey,
we
guess
are. Oh, 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 the
what?
country definitely. I'm not gonna say we, but the country
Yeah, we as
outside of
a
we,
country, we as
yeah,
a
the country,
country, yeah.
dumbest doorknobs. So we're, last night I was saying to the audience, I was at an event where there was a sister there from Suriname, and she was talking about the fact that when I was 14, I went to school, and then we heard gunshots, and we were in a democracy, and then that night we weren't. There was a coup, and it took 40 years. Imani, she said 40, and then she whispers to me, Lurie, I don't think Americans get it. And I was like, Mirel, we don't get it. Not studying this shit, and we don't get it. Talk to us about now that we're here. We are in worst case scenario territory, and I know that there is I've been framing this as the most optimistic way that I possibly can. But let's deal with the cold ass reality. What the hell is a Department of Life, and who the crap thought RFK should be leading the Department of Health and Human Services, and just how bad is bad in this
I
bad?
mean, it's bad. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. It is
Mm.
bad. I'm gonna
Oh,
say at the
no.
outset that my work wife and podcast co-host and BFF Jess always says, and I think this might be a Churchill quote, but the only way out is through. And so
Mm.
we're not gonna get out of this. We're gonna have to go through it, and then where we are as a nation on the other side of it is really the question now. So anything that you're
Wow.
planning on doing, you have to think about what it's going to look like in 4 years if we have elections in 4 years. And you need to figure out what you can do, honestly, locally, because it's really the
Mm.
local community building, community organizing that is going to make the difference here.
Right.
But in terms of national policy, when it comes to people who are, abortion rights enthusiasts like I am, it's dire. It's
Mm.
dire because what we're facing now is a man who has a 1,000-page plan
Right.
that he's going to attempt to implement. Now, is he going to be able to implement it all at the same time? No, because there's a lot of shit in there. But we
Right.
know what he's going to focus on first, mass deportations, and
Yep.
we know what his constituents want him to focus on, which is abortion and then trans rights, because apparently we're throwing trans people under the bus like day in and day out now.
Right.
And so I am of the mind that it might vary to the extent that we can get him out in 4 years, or to the extent that we have a democratic process that allows us to choose in 4 years. I am of the mind that it might take him the full 4 years to do all of this
Mm.
mass deportation nonsense. I'm not
Wow.
sure how much
Huh.
it's such a huge endeavor, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're gonna nationalize the military, you're gonna go after people, you're gonna build camps, you're gonna put people in camps. That's what we're looking at. I think that that's a
Mm.
massive undertaking. History shows us. I mean, I think I read a Blue Sky post that said something like Hitler won and was in office in January, and by March, the first concentration camps were built. So
Right.
maybe it's still me being naive about how quickly things can move. But
Mm.
from my perspective, this idea about what he's going to do with reproductive health care is to simply erase it. And it's
Wow.
kind of what he wants to do with trans people, right? They want to erase them from existence. And so
Mm.
what he's planning on doing is implementing what Project 2025 calls a quote, life agenda. And that life
Yeah.
agenda would entail, and this is a direct quote, right? All references to abortion, reproductive health, sexual and reproductive rights will be removed from all federal laws, regulations,
Mm.
contracts, and grants. So that's like, it's like some jamoke in the Congressional Research Office is going to be there with a Sharpie, just going through the Code of Federal Regulations, what we lawyers call the CFR, right? Just crossing out all references to reproductive health care, sexual and reproductive rights, so that they don't
Jesus.
exist anymore as a matter of federal law, right? How
Mm.
long it's going to take him to do that, it's unclear. But what I
Mm.
do know is that the people who are concerned that this group of ass clowns are too incompetent to do what they want to do, I would really caution people against
Mm.
falling for that line. And I've seen a lot of
Okay.
mainstream talking heads on MSNBC. I'm not trying to name names, I'm not trying to drag people, who really seem to think that these people are too incompetent and their agenda is too vast and too big, that there's no way they're going to be able to do it all because they're too incompetent.
Mm.
They might be stymied from doing it all because it just takes too much time to do all of the crazy shit they want to do. But make no mistake that they are going to form a Department of Life because they can. Oh, you think
Right.
guardrails are in place? You think Congress has to have some say? Well, guess who? Guess who owns Congress now? It's not just
Mm.
that Republicans own Congress now. It's that Donald Trump, the man, owns Congress now because he's got this dipshit Elon Musk next to him, like his new favorite son, who is
Wow.
threatening to primary Republicans who don't fall in line with Trump's agenda. So anyone in the past who you thought may have been a never Trumper or may once have criticized him very lightly, that's all gone. So when we
Mm.
talk about, making sure that we're going, he wants to disband Health and Human Services Task Force on Reproductive Health Care. Well, reproductive health care doesn't exist anymore. So it's just
Right.
a task force on God knows what, a task force on implementing a personhood agenda, a task force
Mm.
on making sure, as the Department of Life's mission goal is, of furthering the health and well-being of all Americans from conception to natural death. From conception is overt personhood language. And so
Right.
that means all of this nonsense we've heard over the past 2 years about sending abortion back to the states and letting states decide is just that. It is
Mm.
nonsense because the ultimate goal is to install personhood. Even as a constitutional amendment, I'm not sure how many governorships Republicans hold. If it's not three-fourths, it might be close. Is it three-fourths or two-thirds? Three-fourths.
Three-fourths.
Three-fourths, right? So
I
they
think
could
it's
just
three-fourths.
amend,
60,
they could just
60%.
amend the
Two
Constitution,
thirds. Mm.
right?
I'm trying to
So
do the
it's,
math in my head and remember
I'm
how many it
bad at
requires
math.
for you to. I know. This is why we went to law school.
Right, exactly. But all of the things that these guardrails, these institutions that mainstream pundits, that your sort of Democratic podcast class, right? Folks like
Mm.
Pod Save America who
Oh,
believe that these
jeez.
guardrails are going to hold. They are not going to hold. The Supreme Court already told Donald Trump that he has immunity for the stuff that he does while in office, even if it's not really related to his time in office. This is a lawless president who has a 1,000-page plan about what he wants to do to dismantle the administrative state, to dismantle the Department of Education, to dismantle HHS, to implement a Department of Life with a life agenda. These are all things to mandate state reporting on abortion data so that even
Damn.
states that don't want to report abortion data will now be subject to having their federal funding reduced or pulled entirely if they don't comply. So
Mm.
we're in a real crisis now. And I
Yeah.
don't want to be a doom and gloomer, but I also feel like we need to be realistic about
Yeah.
what's about to happen so that we are not, like your friend said, one day we have a democracy and then you hear shots fired and you wake up in the morning and no longer do we have a democracy. We all need
Right.
to be clear-eyed about what's coming, not just to protect ourselves and our families, but to
Mm.
protect ourselves and our families in such a way that then we can start helping protecting others, right? You got to put your own
Right.
face mask on
Right.
in order to help other people.
Yeah.
And we need to stop thinking that these things aren't going to happen because we are wasting time hand-wringing about which things are going to be implemented rather than shoring our own lives up so that we can help other people shore theirs up.